Hi. Hi. I yesterday I read some from a book I got by PDF called The End of All Evil by Jonathan Locke um, from 2005. And I'm just going to start from the beginning and see how far I can get through this. Chapter 1, Freedom. The definition of freedom is the infinite value of the human being. The definition of evil is the destruction of freedom. Everything that is evil teaches people that they have limited value. Simple. Truth is always simple. All people recognize truth because all people are intelligent beings. It is the nature of evil to create artificially complex ideas. It does this to hide or obfuscate the freedom it destroys. If you remove the complexities and fears from your life, you will find a plain and beautiful truth. This truth is the nature of your worth. Value of man. To understand freedom is to understand the value of a person. Everything that evil wants is to disguise and destroy your value. All authority is created by evil men to disguise your worth. To understand your own worth is to understand the nature of liberty. Evil. The crucial key for understanding our world is to understand the nature of evil. Evil challenges the value of people by denying them the opportunity to make their own choices, by denying them the chance to grow strong in learning and understanding. Freedom. While evil seeks to destroy or hide a person's worth, freedom shows humans their full potential and their full value. With freedom, people have loved, cured disease, removed hunger, eased labor, and lived in peace. With freedom, happiness is possible. Freedom is the exact opposite of evil. Everything written in this book is written to destroy the ideas of culture and law. The lesson of this book is simple. Nothing on earth is more valuable than you. Chapter 2, Earth. There is a dark conspiracy which has clouded the minds of humanity throughout all ages. The conspiracy is evil incarnate and controls vast mountains of human emotions, work, thought, and speech. It has been responsible for the deaths of hundreds upon hundreds of millions and the slavery of nearly every being who has ever lived. If you can accept a single principle, that you have infinite worth, then this book will give you the vision necessary to see the world as it truly is. To know once and for all that this dark conspiracy is not strong, but weak, that evil is not growing, but dying. Principle versus law. To understand how evil controls people, it is necessary to understand the difference between principle and law. A principle is a truth that creates freedom. A law is a lie that creates slavery. Principles describe reality. They are knowledge that help you to make use of your world. Because of your intelligence, you recognize principles in everything you do. Every true thing you learn is a principle. The movements of your hands, which foods taste good, mathematics, and empathy for a friend are all based on principles. Laws are artificial ideas created by evil men to restrict the thinking and understanding of people. Laws mask themselves in authority so that they can impersonate principles. When people mistake law for principle, their freedom is restricted. When people mistake truth for the ideas of authority, their abilities and their wisdom are diminished. This is the purpose of law. An example of a principle can be found in thermodynamics. A liquid is cooler than a gas. This is a principle. Because this is a principle, it does not restrict us, but enables us. Using this principle, we can condense and expand a substance between gas and liquid to create refrigeration. With this principle, we have more understanding and more power. Principles are truths that create freedom. An example of a law can be found in the culture of royalty. A commoner owes homage to the king. This is a law. Because this is a law, it destroys freedom and enslaves. Under this law, a person must neglect usage of their minds, their speech, and their actions. They must believe that they are worth less than the king. Notice that unlike principle, there is no truth in law. It is entirely possible to disrespect the king and therefore to break the law. Law must be enforced because there is no truth in it. A law destroys freedom because it is a lie. A principle, however, creates freedom because it is knowledge. That which destroys freedom is evil. Simplicity. The world is simpler than it pretends. Complexities are found in every aspect of our cultures, politics, and economies. Every day, people are introduced to new ideas, new spin, new views, or a new symptom of our world. Many of these ideas are perversions of principle designed to engineer specific reactions from people. Evil societies invent ideas to destroy the free thinking of people. Some of history's names for these ideas have been socialism, fascism, racism, communism, democracy, class warfare, political correctness, propriety, decency, royalty, and terrorism. All of these ideas are created for exactly the same purpose. They are all vehicles to confuse the minds of the victims of slavery. They are all evil. You are capable of understanding everything in the world around you. Your intelligence is not limited. Distortions and complexities are introduced into your understanding so that evil men can control you. Evil wants you to believe that you are incapable of understanding your own world. When you understand the magnitude of your own worth, evil will fail. There are two principles relevant to understanding the concept of intelligence. The first is simplicity. The principle of simplicity states that intelligence recognizes truth. When any truth is presented in pure form, all people are capable of understanding it. There is no truth that you cannot learn. This is the principle of simplicity, that intelligence recognizes truth. The second principle is the principle of obfuscation. Obfuscation is the distortion of principle. Obfuscation is the creation of false ideas in order to hide truth. Sometimes this is simply adding ideas on top of truth to disguise the nature of the original truth. Even ideas that seem entirely appropriate can be used to bury simple truths. Obfuscation is used by evil to confuse the minds of people. Obfuscation distorts principles so that people will be unable to learn. Evil uses obfuscation so that you will be unable to gain wisdom. It does this to limit your freedom. Culture knows that people will discover fewer truths if they are focused on artificial complexities. As children grow, they learn that seemingly complex ideas are actually basic and simple principles. What may have seemed impossible to understand at one point becomes wonderful once understood. It is good to gain wisdom. With wisdom, you can do anything. Your search for knowledge will become easier for you as you shed any notion of your own inferiority. Evil uses obfuscation to make people feel inferior. You are not inferior to other people, and you are not inferior to ideas. You have infinite worth. Who you are. As a human being, you are very special. You are unlike the minerals, the plants, or the animals of Earth. Nothing commands the abilities of intelligence like you. Nothing else has such complete and total ambition to satisfy dreams. Nothing else has the desire or the thirst for knowledge that you possess. You are a human being. There is no limit to your nature. There is no end to your capacity for understanding or for happiness. As a human being, your life is not subject to any will except your own. You require no permission, favor, or license to learn and grow. Anything that you desire can be yours. People naturally seek happiness in their lives, and the most common and deepest desire is for the love and strength of their families. Everything you do enhances security, peace, and prosperity for yourself and those you love. Your ability to create these things from the desires of your heart is properly defined as faith. With faith, you will find joy in every walk of your life. Faith. Faith is the courage to test ideas for truth. With faith, people discover whether ideas are true or false. With faith, people learn principles. People use faith to take steps in testing principles. We often fail, but we always learn. Imagine walking over a rocky surface. Perhaps you expect that the surface is solid and will not shift. If you expected firm ground but found movement, you may stumble. When the ideas you are testing are wrong, your test will fail. Your intelligence helps you to adjust your thinking to better understand the principles of walking. You learn to control your balance in spite of the difficult terrain. You use faith to test your new understanding and soon can traverse successfully and quickly. You are mastering principles. Anytime human beings put principles into action, they will feel power, excitement, and joy. The realization of intelligence is what people seek. Some examples are a little child proudly showing his parents that he has learned to tie his shoes, or a student mastering an understanding of mathematics, or a husband and wife resolving an argument. These are the discovery principles by the test of faith. The application of faith to principle brings wisdom. Freedom is necessary. The destruction of freedom prevents people from using faith. It prevents people from testing their understanding of principles. When we are not free to take steps, we cannot learn and we cannot grow. Love, prosperity, and knowledge are all things that are only possible with freedom. Freedom brings everything good. As a human being, the degree of freedom that you require is infinite. Freedom is the infinite value of the human being. If evil destroys freedom in any area of your life, it can limit your wisdom, your joy, your love, and your joy. Danger. There are people who would destroy your freedom. They want to control you so that you cannot become the person you want to be. In order to control you, they use force to take away the liberty that you were born with. You must never underestimate the prowess or cruelty of evil people. Evil will confiscate money, destroy virtue, and spill blood. Most people are not evil. Most people try to create and not to destroy. However, evil people do exist, and they are extremely dangerous. They are called authority. Authority. There is no authority on earth that can rightfully govern your life. Born to this world, you and you alone control your eyes, your ears, your tongue, your hands, and your mind. All authority which claims to be able to dispose of you and your abilities is deceit. You are born to this world so that you might have the free agency of life. Life is liberty. With liberty and faith in this world, you can learn and do anything. Anyone who tells you that you must yield your mind, your body, or your possessions to authority is evil. Understand that choices made of your own free will are not evil. There is nothing wrong with sacrifice if it is made willingly. But sacrifice without choice is not sacrifice, it is slavery. Authority always places demands on people by force. Authority never asks permission. Obscured. The simplest authorities are common thieves. They use extortion or stealth to confiscate things that you value. They can steal money, virtue through rape, or life through murder. By their actions, they are teaching you that your worth is inferior to theirs. The tool of their authority is violence. There are other, far more powerful authorities in your everyday life. They are dramatically more dangerous, more profitable, and more subtle. They teach you through distorted ideas that you are not capable or worthy of living free. Authorities teach that other people can manage your life better than you can. With a callous disregard for your worth, you are commanded to behave according to someone else's ideas. The height of the danger can be seen in the extent to which these commands are commonly accepted as good. We know them as culture. You will find such subterfuge everywhere you have value in your life. If something is valuable to you, you can be sure that someone somewhere is willing to take it from you. While they bear the same evil as the common thief, the methods of sophisticated culture are normally much, much more powerful. Evil. Evil is the destruction of freedom. It cannot be stated more simply. Everywhere you look, you will find the obfuscation of evil. There are countless ideas which are taught about the nature of evil. Every false idea is created by evil to hide truth from you. Evil is not darkness, and it is not a frightening unknown. Evil is not some mystical psychology of man, nor is it inherent in our natures. It is not supernatural, and it most definitely exists. As with all principles, the principle of evil is simple. Evil is the destruction of freedom. When free, you can build glory, peace, prosperity, and joy into the world. Around you, you will find all these things. Men and women like you built these things. Evil enslaves. Evil is found in words such as force, compulsion, tax, violence, theft, censure, and politics. Notice that in such things there is no joy. None have any value to humanity. Control. Evil seeks to be a master over you. Evil wants you to be a slave. What we consider as real slavery is indeed only one form of slavery. The African slaves in the United States were compelled to work and toil for other people's benefit. Their lives were mostly controlled for the benefit of the master, but they had some very limited freedoms. Some were able to create distinct traditions and maintain families. They did their best to build joy into their lives, despite the tyranny wrought upon them. Because they were in control of portions of their lives, were they free? How much freedom does a person deserve? How much freedom can be destroyed before we recognize that it is evil? Slavery is not a concept of totality. Slavery exists wherever the freedom of man is destroyed. Theft and bullying are slavery. In history, African natives, Jews, and many others have experienced lifelong slavery. The ultimate slavery is murder. Slavery stops people from being able to make choices for their own lives. Everything that restricts your mind, your movements, and your speech is evil. Slavery is found in both the partial and complete destruction of freedom. Evil compels you to behave in manners that do not benefit you or those you love. Culture and law exercise overwhelming force in the name of propriety and public good. They destroy freedom and put human lives under other people's control. Chapter 3. Authority. Okay. You were born to this world with sovereignty over your mind and over your life. Your abilities to think, to feel, to learn, and to love are your liberty. In you, these capacities are infinite. You have infinite worth. Evil seeks to destroy your liberty. It seeks to be an authority over you. It does not want you to have liberty. Evil seeks to destroy you so that it can use you as a puppet. The implementation of evil is called authority. Authorities are what evil implements as it exercises control over the lives of people. Authority limits your ability to learn, to think, to feel, to love, and to grow. This is why authority is evil. Authorities are not accidents. They are specifically created by intelligent people to control you. There are two tools that evil makes use of in order to accomplish this. Both tools destroy freedom. They are culture and violence. Each of these tools of authority have weapons which are used to attack your liberty. The weapons of violence are theft, imprisonment, torture, rape, and death. The weapons of culture are law and the control of speech. Evil is implemented by force in the lives of people. Evil wants you to obey its authority. It uses the weapons of violence on everyone who will not obey. It uses the weapons of culture to sustain whatever obedience it manages to achieve. Violence. Your physical body allows you to exercise principles over every aspect of reality. With it, you have the tools necessary to interact with the physical world. Physicality greatly enables you. It is a gift of pure freedom. People obey authority when they are subjected to violence. Violence threatens your physical body. It threatens your interaction with the physical world. People who are subjected to violence are compelled to obey because they want to protect the freedom that their bodies bring to them. Pain and mutilation limit your ability to interact with your world. Death destroys your freedom completely. The lie of tyranny is that you will maintain the freedom of life by obeying authority. The choices it offers you are a lifetime of obedience or death. Evil is the master of deceit. The objective of evil is not violence, but obedience. The purpose of violence is to compel obedience. Its design is the destruction of freedom. Whether submitting to authority and obeying or allowing it to destroy you physically, you will have lost your freedom. The only way to maintain freedom is to fight tyranny at all times and at all costs. Perspective. The cultures of Earth offer their people different moralities. Perverted definitions of good and evil are found everywhere on the planet. In one culture, a thing is proper. In another, it is taboo. In one culture, a word is egregious. In another, it is not. Criminal acts are defined entirely differently in opposing cultures. When an authority is established amongst people, evil is either obvious to see or nearly impossible to see, depending entirely upon whether or not you are a part of its culture. Even though few people are able to recognize the oppression found in their own cultures, culture is still oppression. Most people question in horror how an average German soldier could himself participate in the murder of Jews. Most people question in horror how millions of average people under the umbrella of communism could bring their brothers certain death at the hands of police. The examples in history are more than plentiful. They exist in every culture ever designed. Culture maintains a death grip upon the nature of man. It is not true that history's villains misused authority. The truth is that they followed the object and design of authority perfectly. Tyranny is always disguised as culture and law. The authority principle. The authority principle describes the behavior of people who live under the rule of law. The authority principle shows that people obey anything and anyone they believe is an authority. Though the who, the why, and the what have changed in history, the behavior of people is the same. They obey. When people are taught that obedience is principle, they obey. When they are taught that the source of worth and knowledge is found in another person rather than in themselves, they obey. This is the rule of law, and it teaches people that their will is subjective to the will of law and those who control the law. Examples of authorities are governments, bullies, mafias, thieves, and kings. People obey authority in their lives either out of fear of violence or because culture conditions them to accept obedience as proper and good. Authorities always use both tools. The most successful authorities do not have to use violence as often because of the strength of their cultures. Both culture and violence enforce authority. Under authority, people have obeyed law to the atrocities of history. The murders, raping, and looting under chieftains, kings, emperors, communism, and Nazis were not perpetuated by small groups of men. They were performed by thousands and even millions of peoples. These people would not have committed such egregious evils on their own. If a random person had commanded them, they would have refused. So why, at the behest of a perceived authority, do they obey? Obedience to authority is the authority principle. Principle will obey authority no matter what is asked of them. They obey because they have been lied to. They have been falsely taught that principle is found in law. In history, it is difficult to imagine why some cultures are so much more violently depraved than others. Authority is the reason. Cultures with the least influential authority are the most peaceful, and by definition, the most free. Cultures with the most influential authorities are the most violent and, by definition, slaves. Anytime you are compelled to act in obedience to authority, you are being influenced by this principle. Evil uses the authority principle to condition people to obey without questioning what, why, or whom they are obeying. Destroying your identity to gain power over you is the modus operandi of evil. Pattern of tyranny. Tyranny is disguised as culture and law. Everything that evil seeks is the destruction of freedom, to destroy the value of people. The pattern of tyranny is simple. The object is to enslave the minds of a people by creating a culture of obedience. To gain the obedience of people, there is a process that must be taken. This process is the pattern of tyranny. War. Before an authority can be established, war must take place. War is the implementation of violence. It is the tool that evil uses to establish authority. All of history's wars have occurred because of a desire to implement a new authority over people. On the smallest scale, this occurs via a process of threat and acquiescence. Such is the behavior of bullies, thugs, and mafias. On the largest scale, it occurs in violent multi-year battles. Such is the behavior of nations and empires. Enemies. In order to offer people an escape from violence, new authorities teach people that obedience will end war. The design of authority is obedience. Authorities condition people to obedience by promising to protect them from dangerous enemies. Theocracies have used the enemy of blasphemy. The Nazis used the Jews. Communists used the rich. Many, many enemies have been created, but by far the most common is anarchy. Protection. In order to engineer a culture and pervert the free thinking of men, evil must create an enemy. It is not important to tyrants who the enemy is. Tyrants offer protection from these enemies in exchange for obedience. Take careful note that they offer protection, but obedience is mandatory. Whether or not you wish to have the authority over you, you will obey, or they will revert to violence. The enemies are only created to ease the burden of obedience from the minds of people. Cultural enemies are an illusion. Benjamin Franklin taught that those who give up liberty to gain security will soon have neither. This is not an idle observation. The pattern of tyranny clearly shows that the entire purpose of presenting you with the need for security is to convince you to yield your liberty. That is everything authority wants. The demand for security is raised by those who seek power over you. This is how they create enemies. Make no mistake, it isn't the enemy that tyrants are after. They are after you. The illusion of cultural enemies is designed to restrict the thinking of people. It is designed to convince people that the real enemy is not the evil that rules over them, but some imaginary demon that would do them harm. This is the lie of tyranny. It requires your obedience in order to save you. Tyranny is disguised as culture and law. Social proof. As people begin to submit under the duress of violence to the will of a new authority, a principle known as social proof enters culture. The more people that obey the new authority, the more likely it is that others will follow. The normalcy of obedience becomes a part of everyday life. It is natural to want to escape the violence of authority. People who live under the oppression of nations or thugs will inevitably accept the offer of obedience. A mugger will offer not to shoot if a wallet is surrendered. Rapists offer not to kill if virtue is surrendered. Mafias offer not to torture if payment is made. Government offers not to obliterate life if laws are obeyed. The offer is sweetened with the illusion of enemies. When a person faces certain pain or death on one hand, or protection from an enemy on the other, the will to remain free will eventually break down. Law. Laws are decreed and written to legitimize obedience. Law impersonates principle. People are taught that what is law is right. They are not taught to do what is right, but to obey what is law. The legitimacy of law is the object of culture. Culture uses law to distort the minds of people into believing that they are incapable of seeking truth or living in peace. It teaches that law is legitimate instead of one's own mind. Control of speech. The most fundamental weapon of culture is the control of speech. While history has shown violent examples of this weapon, it exists in every culture as the code of propriety. The objective of the control of speech is making sure that those who were compelled to bend to the will of authority never gained the courage to look back. In order to maintain obedience, culture demands that everyone it enslaves enforces its own will upon those around them. It teaches people to call their recalcitrant neighbors weird or insane. It demands that every person turn on those who fail to obey the precepts of culture. Culture condemns as immoral and antisocial all those who fail to obey its precepts. In this way, culture shapes people's minds by restricting their speech. Further, culture endows its evangelists with the adjectives such as noble and upstanding. Those who most closely follow the rules of culture, especially in condemning enemies, are rewarded for inflicting stigma upon those less willing to obey. It is this devaluation of the human spirit that proves the evil of cultural norms. Those who exhibit recalcitrance or suggest rebellion against authority are ostracized, berated, or demonized. It is hard to endure the loneliness associated with fitting outside of popular culture. This is how the control of speech is a weapon designed to break the spirit of man. It is a weapon designed to compel you to obedience. Once the people under a culture begin to enforce the control of speech upon each other, authority has been established. It now rules the very people who enforce its power. This is the design of culture. And authority can now do with you as it pleases. Enforcement. There are times when authority must revert to violence in order to maintain obedience. There will always be a small minority who refuse to obey the tenets of cultural law. Because of this, authorities employ a constant stream of violence known as law enforcement or police. These are not police in defense of liberty, but police in defense of authority. Cultures always teach that liberty and authority are one and the same, but the design of police is to wield the weapons of violence in the preservation of authority, not to defend liberty. Authority must also employ violence when cultures break down. Throughout history, people have slowly and steadily learned more and more about their own worth and hence demanded more and more freedom. Different cultures have fallen as people realize that culture is a lie. When cultures begin to break down, it is because people are learning about their value. Such cultures and the authorities they protect are doomed. Never once in history has culture in decline been redeemed. When authorities see that their culture is being dismantled and obedience is no longer theirs to enjoy, they return to violence. These returns to violence are historically extremely brutal. The violent enforcement of law is a sign of coming liberty. Example, take a look at a generic historical example of the pattern of tyranny. A rogue thug gathers together a band of men to extort money from the people nearby where he lives. In his success, he plunders massive amounts of money and grows his gang into an army. He successfully kills the previous officer of law enforcement or subverts them through stealth. Knowing that he can plunder more value in the long term if he leaves his victims alive, he implements a tax upon everyone in his range of influence. He draws borders, he gives decrees. Importantly, he promises his victims that he will protect them from all other thugs. His victims slowly become accustomed to his will and his lies. The people become afraid if they hear their neighbors talk of escaping the taxes and cruelty. Soon they actively support the regime by targeting all treasonous speech and turning in deviants to the police. Originally called criminal, the thug is now called authority. He is called law and order. This example could have easily described any gang of barbarians from the Middle Ages or from ancient history. It could apply to any king or emperor of years past. It could have described any warlord of today or any mafia. In fact, it closely resembles every authority that has ever been established. Once people are conditioned to accept the notion of authority, they normally obey without thinking. The object of law is obedience, and the destruction of freedom is found in the blindness of this obedience. The authority principle shows that even when a person would normally believe an action to be wrong, if ordered by an authority, they will still perform it. The establishment and the exercise of authority over people is called the pattern of tyranny in history. It is easy to follow this pattern through history. Adolf Hitler created an enemy of the Jews. Early on, German culture was manipulated and Jews were condemned as dirty and greedy, a people odd because they kept to their own kind. Soon the culture was in place where people were chastised for defending Jews. People who demonized them were championed. Speech was then controlled. Next, Adolf Hitler made Jews into a full-fledged enemy. The Jews became responsible for all social and economic ills. The solution was to put Adolf Hitler in power, to yield German liberties to him so that he could save them from the enemy. Make no mistake, Hitler was not after the Jews, he was after the Germans. An evil man, he was simply willing to sacrifice millions of Jews to obtain power. Do not make the mistake of thinking Hitler was a racist. Follow the pattern. In short order, he ruled the entire nation and forced all Germans to serve him and his army. His true ambition was not racism, but total world domination. Socialism and communism create the enemy of greed in the same pattern by controlling speech. Profit becomes a dirty word, even though it only means that you have labored to create a better life. Money becomes evil, even though it simply represents your work, which is obviously moral. They create the enemy, but it is not greed thereafter, it is you. If they can convince you that your money and your labors are the enemy, then you will yield those labors and your money to them. Authority is not designed to destroy the enemy, it is designed to enslave you. Democracies create the enemy of anarchy in the same pattern by controlling speech. It becomes immoral to suggest that one could break the law. It does not matter which law or what it says. Nobility is placed on the payment of taxes no matter how much they demand from you. It is the highest form of cultural propriety to obey the law, regardless of what it says. The enemy is the fictional anarchy wherein no individual is safe, because everyone is a tyrant. In order to save you from anarchy, you yield authority to the law. You obey. Evil is not after the destruction of anarchy, it is after you. If you can see the tyranny in a culture that demands that you obey, no matter what is asked of you and no matter who writes the laws, then you are beginning to understand the nature of evil. Everything that is evil teaches you that you have limited worth. The rule of law is the single most dangerous idea ever inflicted upon mankind. It has gone by countless names throughout the ages of history. In more basic tribes, it is known as respect for elders. In the tyranny of royals, it is known as nobility, birthright, and divinity. In communism, it is known as the supremacy of the state. In dictatorships, it is known as the antidote to anarchy. In theocracies, it is known as revelation. The net teaching of this idea is that you are to obey the law, not because of its merits or its morality. You are to obey only because it is law. It is assumed that even if the law is wrong, then it is right to follow because it supports the system, and the system is even more important than you. In order for an intelligent person to choose what is right, they must know who is asking obedience of them. They must consider why it is being asked and what it is they're being asked to do. Only then can they decide for themselves if it is right. This is not what authority wants. Authority is not concerned with you doing what is right. It is only concerned with obedience. Culture teaches that the nature of the law and what it asks you to do are irrelevant. Culture teaches that obedience is propriety. Culture teaches that when law is created, it becomes morality. Law is a weapon. It is used by evil to attack its prey. Whether in the name of duty to king, loyalty to state, or rule of law, the law is the weapon used to extort and control. Culture upholds the nobility of law. Culture teaches that law is proper and good. It never questions who wrote the law. Tyrant and brother are the same. Culture never questions whether or not the law is right. You are to obey no matter what it says. In this fashion, law is a powerful weapon to be used against you. All principalities create volumes of laws that take lifetimes to understand and armies of lawyers to manipulate. All of these things are weapons in the hands of the powerful, which they will use at your expense. Law holds value only to those who create it, and only because your culture demands that you obey it. The purest invitation to tyranny is your commitment to obey law regardless of what it says. Against you, the law becomes the perfect weapon. Whomever controls the law controls you. Your worth is measured by the extent of your obedience. So that's the end of chapter 3. I am going to take a break and maybe come back tomorrow with the rest. Thank you so much. Love you. Bye.